Ah yes, Goldeneye, the game that changed how video game tie-ins were perceived and launched many late night gaming sessions. It's a legendary part of video game history, and you'd think that another James Bond game from Rare would have been a no-brainer, but after washing their hands of Goldeneye in 1997, Rare were done with James Bond. Even though Goldeneye had shifted 8 million copies on Nintendo 64, the game hadn't generated that much money for the studio themselves, most of the profit going to MGM and Nintendo through console sales. For their next outing, they wanted to create a franchise that they owned and could develop, allowing them full creative control and the ability to reap the full rewards of their work. That game would be Perfect Dark, a true spiritual successor to Goldeneye that took what that game established and ran with it to the next level. But that leaves the question, what came next for James Bond? With Nintendo and Rare opting not to renew their license for the franchise, it became open season for other companies to come in and pitch their own ideas for James Bond games. Goldeneye had propelled James Bond to the forefront of gaming franchises, so there was a lot of interest in riding that gravy train while it was still full steam. That's where Electronic Arts comes into the picture. They snapped up the exclusive rights to the James Bond video game franchise in 1998. With a new movie releasing in 1999, The World Is Not Enough, EA had little time to sit on their hands. Black Ops Entertainment had already been approached by MGM in 1997 over developing a James Bond game for the PS1. They were placed in charge of the first EA James Bond game, a video game adaptation of the 1997 film Tomorrow Never Dies. You might think it odd that they chose to go back and make a game about a movie that had already been out for a year, but it worked wonders for Goldeneye on N64, so hey, why not repeat history? With a 2-year development period and gamers eager to see James Bond return to consoles, you'd think the obvious answer was to make a first-person shooter that rode the coattails of Goldeneye, play it safe for the first outing, and take all that money. This was not the case at all. Researching the development of Tomorrow Never Dies leads to some interesting nuggets of information. When MGM approached Black Ops Entertainment originally, the idea was to create a continuation of Tomorrow Never Dies' story, the idea being that the film didn't need to be expanded on and that a continuation would have given Black Ops Entertainment more creative freedom. However, test groups and focus group feedback strongly suggested that people wanted to play through the events of the movie, so the decision was made to loosely follow the action of the film. EA only came on board with Tomorrow Never Dies once they'd signed up for the rights to the James Bond video game franchise, meaning this game was already well into production before EA even saw it. The game's director sat down and watched all the James Bond movies up to that point, taking inspiration from the visual style of the movies and the narrative beats that they wanted to cover, something which required a whole new game engine to be built for. As well as the vehicle segments, these were intended to be joined by scuba diving segments, although these were ultimately scrapped from the final game. Unlike Goldeneye, the game would feature segments of the movie intercutting the levels, tying together the in-game action. None of the film's voice actors returned to reprise their voice roles, meaning most of the characters vary from sounding kind of like their on-screen counterparts to sounding nothing like.
007, satellite reconnaissance has located a military outpost on the Russian border. MI6 intelligence has confirmed that they are using a high-powered communications dish to illegally decode the positions of our GPS satellites.
Ah, Mr. Bond. It's not nice to keep a lady waiting.
Where is Paris?
Let's talk about where the red encoder is first, shall we?
Welcome to Saigon.
Always nice to see you, Elliot.
I wasn't planning to open this center until tomorrow, but you're just in time to help me finish writing the inaugural story. Your obituaries.
White Knight, the British Navy has just launched a Tomahawk cruise missile to destroy the bazaar. Evacuate immediately.
I just need a little more time.
The big pink elephant in the room though was Rare's Goldeneye, which had released in 1997 on Nintendo 64. At no point in the game's development had Black Ops intended to ever release Tomorrow Never Dies on Nintendo 64. The game was always envisioned as a PS1 outing, but the CEO of Black Ops did acknowledge the impact of Goldeneye on gaming, stating, "Goldeneye raised the bar for video gaming in general, but our different platform and movie inspiration destined us to make a different game, one specifically for the PlayStation, with a similar but different Bond experience. We hope we match the fun and quality level of Goldeneye, but I have to say that the greatness of other titles such as Diddy Kong and Banjo-Kazooie also played a crucial role in what we were striving for with Tomorrow Never Dies." Speaking about the game being third person, he stated in the same discussion, "We have had to adjust our plans somewhat in lieu of deadlines, which forces us to be realistic considering that at the end of the day, your game has to be tight from a gameplay mechanics standpoint. So what we were focused on keeping was the third-person perspective of Bond being the core gameplay mechanic, and then dovetailed that smoothly with skiing. As a result, players will have an opportunity to experience different breaks in the action so they can enjoy more than just a shooting game. So it's clear that they always saw this game as a third-person offering. By all accounts, it seems the team were very optimistic about their offering and felt that it not being on the same platform as Goldeneye put enough distance between it and the game to avoid direct comparisons. Unfortunately, having played this in the day back on my PS1, I can say that it didn't work out for them. Tomorrow Never Dies on PS1 released in November 1999, a few weeks before The World Is Not Enough touchdown in cinemas. PlayStation gamers have been forced to sit on the sidelines and watch Goldeneye mania sweep across gaming with no port delivered to their console. The fact that the next James Bond game would not only be landing on PS1 but exclusively on PlayStation was a huge win for fans of that console. That feeling receded quickly upon playing the game itself. Tomorrow Never Dies on PlayStation is a bit of an awkward outing, to be honest. It's a third-person action game that sees Bond loosely following the events of the Tomorrow Never Dies movie. I say loosely because the game takes some wild deviations with the story and some of the key moments in the movie, with certain characters not even dying where they're meant to. The game mainly focuses on third-person action adventure, letting you run around and shoot enemies with various weapons that you can pick up, including sniper rifles which let you zoom in and take out enemies from a distance. The game does shake things up by letting you drive a car, pivot a plane, and even ski down several mountainsides. Each mission is preempted by a mission briefing read out by Not Judi Dench. The missions have objectives and even have some cutscenes which play out to keep things moving along. There's even some very brief clips from the movie interjected to spice things up a bit. The problem with this one is that the gameplay itself is fairly sloppy. The shooting mechanics are unfocused and largely rely on you hoping the targeting indicator finds the person you want to gun down. More often than not though, it does its own thing and will target the wrong thing entirely, leaving you defenseless as enemies blast you from nearby. Bond skulks around rather clunkily and it never feels all that intuitive. It's all very stiff and very weird. It's a shame because it's clear that some of the levels have had a lot of time and effort put into them. Some of the locales are quite visually impressive for a 1999 PS1 game, allowing for open exploration of the spaces as you find weapons, ammo and health. Another big issue with this game is that there's some intense difficulty spikes throughout the levels. If you haven't saved enough medkits, you're guaranteed to fail at points. Playing on the harder difficulties makes enemies spongier to your shots and makes you take more damage. There's some absolute meh outings in this one that'll put many people off before they even get near the end of the game. You do get to play as Wei Lin for one level from the movie, which is a nice shake-up, but it also coincides with arguably the hardest level in the entire game. The music throughout is pretty good though, and I do like the sound effects used. It's clear that they really wanted to capture that James Bond vibe, and I think they hit the nail on the head in that department. Graphically also, the game doesn't look all that impressive. Even by 1999 standards, it feels very blocky and is riddled with graphical anomalies and signs that the game needed a bit longer in the oven. Overall, it's an okay game, but genuinely nothing anything special, and for many, that was a problem. Critics weren't kind to the game either upon its release, most outlets lamenting the gameplay issues, poor graphics and general lack of polish. Comparisons to Goldeneye were plenty and, fairly or not, the game was viewed widely as a step down for the James Bond video game franchise. Was it fair that the game was compared so heavily to Goldeneye? Possibly not, but then again it was the first game released after Goldeneye, and the first Bond game to land on PS1. As said earlier, PS1 gamers had to watch with green eyes as N64 rode the wave of Goldeneye mania through 1997 and 1998. This was their moment to get that same experience, yet it completely missed the mark. The desire by Black Ops to not compare Goldeneye to Tomorrow Never Dies was cute but poorly conceived. The decisions made during development only amplified this disappointment. For me, the biggest problem this game has is the switch to third person, which is clunky and poorly conceived. The lack of multiplayer forced people to focus on the single player mode, which in itself is only fun in brief moments. While there are ambitious moments here and there, the game doesn't have enough of them to come close to matching the single player of Goldeneye. A multiplayer mode was envisioned during the game's development but was ultimately scrapped so they could focus on that single player, and I have to wonder if that was a wise idea. Ultimately, Tomorrow Never Dies served as an awkward first step into the EA era of James Bond games, a game that carried the burden of its older sibling and stumbled in its shadow. Future games released by EA would learn from these mistakes and course correct, giving James Bond fans some incredible highs. Tomorrow may never die, but this awkward PS1 introduction arrived with one foot in the grave.